Well, here we are. Kind of messy. But here I think I'm gonna, since we're kind of, and I probably should have listed this down a little bit more. I'm basically gonna be rambling my thoughts. rambling. Of movies that I think are underrated, mostly in the superhero genre, since we're kind of, I think we're kind of getting to that point. I think we're getting to that point of films mentioned in my last video of superhero fatigue. If that is what we're facing on. And honestly, I don't know if it's going to be fatigue. I think it's about really just fishing out underwhelming material. And I, for one, I've been kind of watching more independent films. And lately I've been kind of choosy now of what movies I go see, because eventually they're going to be available so fast on streaming service. By the time you blink of an eye, it's already on the streaming service. And time gets a little bit funny. I just found out that Mortal Kombat, the recent adaptation of the video game, is on Tubi, for those who don't know. And it was on HBO Max, but now it's on Tubi. And what I thought about that film, I'm going to tell you right now. Only liked the opening fight scene and the last fight scene between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, even though the film was not good. Not good at all. And that's a shame, too, because don't Warner Brothers own those games, that franchises, and they messed that up? Which I don't understand how you could. And I ain't gonna dash Warner Brothers like that. I love Warner Brothers, alright? I grew up watching y'all movies. A lot of your movies inspired my childhood. A lot. So, it's just disappointing where you've watched a certain property and you don't really feel the love in it. You don't feel the love. You don't feel the pure love and enjoyment that you get from watching these movies. Maybe there's an oversaturation and then just money talks, but then also it gets to a point where purity overcomes money. And I think it deals with pleasing too many people, but I also believe it's just the business side of it and not really trusting the true source material and thinking certain changes, which some changes probably do need to be made, do not resonate with everybody, but then change doesn't resonate with everybody. So, because honestly, I mean, I've been choosing what I go watch in theaters now. Especially, with the Marvel movies, since it's just so common out now. I mean, I could just wait for it to come on Disney Plus and just watch it on Disney Plus. Because when you see it in theaters 3 months from now, it's already going to be on streaming services. It's like, dang, time went by kind of fast. And it's actually kind of why I didn't watch the Eternals in theaters, but I kind of regret not seeing it in the theaters, because I think that is one of the best superhero movies I've seen. And I really don't agree with the rating on it. Like, I really don't. I can't see why people don't like it. I could see maybe a few reasons here. Why? They do have some wokeness. But it didn't deviate from the film. The story of the film. I mean, it's like you have the heroes of the Justice League in the MCU movie. And well, it's a Justice League version of the MCU, but there's a few twists here or there, which was interesting. But it does pose the question with that particular film, if the Eternals, if they're gods, if they knew all this was going to happen in a way, how come they didn't do anything about it? Oh, so we need to make sure that mankind is worthy enough to fight these evildoers all on their own. Yay! Yet you can stop this. A-holes. Curse you. You gotta stop this. And I'm apologize for the video to me in black and white. I try to fix it. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to get a new webcam or something. If my budget. Well. And for those who don't know, Happy Holy Week. Yeah, the color grading kind of faded, but you know what? That doesn't matter. I love the direction and storytelling that Chloe Zhao took with this movie. I like that the film took its time to craft a whole new story, to build this world and these characters. Even though these are gods, they are emotionless. But I loved how these superhuman gods are trying to sympathize with the creation of, I think, the Celestials. I think they claim I have to look back at it. I think the Celestials claim to created humanity or something, or maybe gods. So they were making sure that the humans didn't get too far out there, but given that it just wasn't meant to be, and how chaotic that the human beings have progressed over time, some of the gods have not really been supportive of the human race, and they try to save it, but then after seeing the true nature of humanity, they was like, I don't want to be a part of this, because every time we try to do something, they do the same crap, same thing. We just gonna keep hurting people, destroying things, and not learn our lesson. And they disbanded, and they have to kind of get back together to try to find this threat that's killing each eternal member one by one. And they have this DNT entity that's slowly trying to rebel against the Eternals, which is actually surprising for those who haven't seen the movie. The movie's been out for a year. There's a twist that the actual main villain of the film is actually one of the Eternal members. And I thought that was brilliant. And I love how they wrote that out into how, you have this one being, one immortal, who desperately wants to, I believe he wants to, be a human. He's getting tired of living forever. He's getting tired. I think that's a similar theme of another movie. He's getting tired having to destroy all these other planets, or helping this thing out. Was it? No, it wasn't Galactus. Icarus, but he's tired. He's tired. He is tired of living the life as an Eternal. He wants to, love and experience what it's like to be human and experience human life. Another Eternal kind of follows suit, and they turn against one another, which is actually some pretty good fight scenes. And I just love how they slowly kind of get this team together to try to fight this evil deity. And yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that you have this stuff going on in the film, and then there's nowhere near anything, no information from any of the Avengers ever to come in and say, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's this? What's that? Why is this happening? Who are you? We are the Eternals. Who the freak is that? We are gods. We've been watching you for this how long? If you've been watching us, how in the world did y'all not come in here and help us out when Thanos came and started attacking? Why? Why have you not done that? Why? It wouldn't feel right to interfere. Bullshit! Half the population was gone! You could have helped us. Honestly, I think they had a secret agenda. It's like, yeah, we kind of want to see half the planet gone because we hope humanity could learn their lesson of stop trying to destroy one another. And it worked. Everybody within that 4-year time frame, however long that they were gone, starting coming together. But there's still people out there that were still committing crime. It was less. So maybe the Eternals was like, we kind of knew Thanos would do this, so let's let him do it, and let's hope that humanity learns a lesson from getting too corrupt. I believe the Eternals might have done that. And then Icarus comes in, he's like, yeah, no, I want this done permanently, so we ain't got to, worry about it anymore. And then, you do have that statue that just freezes up, preventing, I forgot what that thing's called, preventing that thing from eroding out of the earth and destroying it. And then, they destroy it off and kill it. That's interesting. But then, all the other movies come out, completely ignoring the event. There's nothing in really any other films that is connecting to those movies. And I ain't gonna lie to you guys, like half of the movies that are in Phase 4 are actually some of my favorites in the MCU. I might jot down my favorite MCU movies here. Probably just 10. Eternals is one of them. And I think Eternals is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. And I regret not seeing that in IMAX at the Chinese theater. Regret. Yeah. Regret. Because I firmly believe, I think the movie really concentrated more on storytelling, and then it was being experimental and artful, and I like that. I like when movies try to balance art and then mainstream action, and it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. I know a lot of people don't like that. Blade Runner 2049 tried to balance that, and I think that's why people didn't resonate with it, because it was also kind of artsy. And I loved it. But also, I thought some of the action scenes were cool. I mean, maybe, yeah. I thought some of the action scenes were cool. My favorite action scene was probably when the Eternals start fighting against Icarus. And just trying to stop him from summoning that big-ass stone monster. But I can tell you now. I really enjoyed it. My favorite Chloe Zhao film so far. I haven't seen her first film, The Rider, and I haven't seen No Man's Land actually. I'm making texts while I'm doing this podcast. Well, I will tell you this. I thought the casting. I thought the casting was great. I thought the story was well great, and honestly, I didn't like Peter Skarsgård, or Bill Skarsgård as Bill. I ain't gonna lie. I thought his role was kind of wasted. I thought the villain. I mean, I liked the twist. I like subvert expectations. Because sometimes when you get what you want, sometimes it's a little underwhelming. I actually like that they had these cast members in here, and yes, I love that it was diverse. Like, yeah, Angelina Jolie. If this movie was made early in like early 2000s or so, I could tell you she would probably be the main lead. She probably would. They still would do the twist, but then they would change things up around with her character, and just for her to be the lead. And I'm sure it won't be comic book accurate. I haven't read the comic books of the Eternals, so I don't know. But I can definitely tell you I thought it was phenomenal. Really phenomenal. BVS. I ain't gonna lie. Batman vs. Superman, Zack Snyder's. And back there, and I was trying to get this to show. It's called Cinema Lives On, and you can't see it because of the damn light. BVS Batman vs. Superman. Honestly, it's okay. It's still okay. After 7 or 8 years, I know the Snyderverse praise is still going on. And I'm kind of still on board with it. Are we going to see the other two Justice Leagues movies at this point? I don't know. But I think it would be a good opportunity to at least take the risk and bring him back just to finish those stories. Maybe not Ezra Miller. But then they also have to kind of come up with an idea, because The Flash is technically a sequel to Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, are the sequels going to ignore The Flash? Or what? Or what's going to happen? I don't think so. If it were to come about, I didn't think so. Ben Affleck, probably the best Batman, and Bruce Wayne. I even like him better than Robert Pattinson, even in the direction. He felt perfect. And after his experience with Daredevil, I would have never thought Ben Affleck as Batman, but since seeing his performance as the character, hands down the best Batman. Underutilized Batman, though. Underutilized. Would I love to see a solo film of him as the character? Yeah, sure. I would love to. Maybe with him directing it or Zack Snyder directing it. Because I ain't gonna lie though, when I saw BVS, and I'll be up front, I didn't like it. I did not like it. It felt crammed. It felt more of a Batman movie with Man of Steel barely in it. I didn't like the fact that they already had planned for Batman and Superman already fighting after just one film. And I think I've already explained this in another video. But I love the grittiness. I love the color correction. I love the cinematography. I love the visuals look that Zack Snyder put into his films. And I just love the style that he has created for this. And the story kind of makes a little bit sense, where Batman does go on a revenge rampage after one of his branches in Metropolis gets destroyed, and he happens to be there witnessing that crap. I didn't like the beginning. I like the tie-in, but it felt a little just too heroic, and I don't know. Maybe that's just Batman being crazy of him running straight out towards the building, the Wayne Tower building, and Metropolis just crumbling down. He just runs in there. Batman must be really crazy for doing that. He must. I do like the action scenes here. I think the story is convoluted a little bit, especially the secondary plot where where you have these characters investigating their own stories to get these two to meet and to join together and face off, concluding the resolution. Well, here. And it's, it sucks. I love I'm telling you, almost every scene that Ben Affleck is in, I was glued to the screen. I was glued to the screen, seeing him doing his thing as the character, as Batman. Love the suit. And this, to me, I feel like I have a little regret not investing in learning about comics, because there's so much. Like, I don't take the time to really invest in learning a bunch of comics, but I've watched YouTube channels to learn and hear them out. But my attention span sometimes is a little bit short. Just being in there and just studying it for a long time, and that's something I need to work on. But I really just loved every moment Ben Affleck being in the film, except for the Martha scene, which we all know that's a different thing. And Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, no. I still favored Morris Chestnut, even though nobody's even considering it. They would never consider that. Now, hopefully they would, because I could see him play Lex Luthor. But that's just me, though. I mean, the guy that was in Titans playing Lex Luthor, he wasn't too bad, even though I ain't gonna lie to you, I didn't like that he was only in there for one episode and they killed him off. And I think they're gonna continue airing the rest of the episodes this month on HBO Max. Titans. Sucks that they cancel it, but with James Gunn's added universe, they're going to basically have everything connected. Am I excited for James Gunn's proposal? I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm split. Maybe after they finish Zack Snyder's stuff. And I'm still ain't gonna lie to you. Zack Snyder starting off his stuff, I was like, not because they were dark. I just thought it was just crammed. There were a lot of story elements crammed that there wasn't enough time to spend a lot of time with character and story and structure. It just was like, I'm not saying every freaking movie of his has to be 3 hours, but I feel like with him, it needs to be just to fully get his story out, to better flesh it out. 4 hours for Justice League, and it worked. He had time to flesh out everything he needed. He had the time. And maybe it's just him. He's probably one of those rare filmmakers to where at his best he shines with complete freedom. Whether people resonate with his work or not. He had freedom to do Watchmen, and that movie was 3 hours and 20 minutes. If you watch the Ultimate Edition, that's actually also one of my favorite superhero movies too. You have to let some filmmakers shine for them to craft a good movie. Like you have to do it. You have to allow them to really craft their story, especially if it's a filmmaker that has a vision and a style of how they want their films to look and to feel and to marinate. Because if you don't and you strip them back, you just it becomes crap. It becomes crap. David Lynch, who's directed the 1984 Dune, not a superhero film, tells you just how straight up he hates it because studios didn't allow him to fully handle his vision. So instead of doing 2 or 3 movies, it was like, we want you to do one. It was like, oh no, that's a lot of material. So they ended up doing almost a 3-4 hour version of it, which I've seen that version. And still, he wasn't pleased with it. They kept punching it back and cutting it up. Which I have not seen the cut up original version release. I've seen the version that was released on the British channel, and it was like 3.5 hours. And I actually thought that was actually pretty good. Not great, but not amazing, but I thought it was good. Denis Villeneuve, of course, is better. But Jesse Eisenberg, I don't know what the heck was thinking. No, I didn't think it was a good choice for him. Challenging, or maybe it wasn't he's supposed to be playing, I guess, the character before he is the character that we all know. Is there replay value to VVS? Yes, I believe so. I believe there's a lot of things to like in it if watching the Ultimate Edition. But we all know the story with all that. I ain't going to go back and bother with all that. I do like it more in that version. I think because there was more time to flesh out the story and character, and it was just more to it. I think it's underrated. I think it had, everybody, I actually liked the fight scene between Batman versus Superman. I thought it was more strategic, where they're not just going at it and hammering each other. It was a strategy-like battle sequence where Batman had a strategy. Superman kind of had a strategy where he wasn't really trying to take down Batman. He was trying to convince him and was like, please don't make me forced to hurt you. I really need your help. And I like that conviction he tries to get him. And Batman, cocky and just so gone in his mentality of just being a vigilante, sometimes to the point where he's straight out murdering people. And I can actually see why that changed, because realistically, you would really have to go insane to keep bringing these insane criminals down and keeping them alive and locked up. Some of them are so bad, some of them do have to go. So what surprised me, Batman finally did break down and just start taking out and murdering his some of his villains. You just don't I don't know. I think people forgot. I'm a Batman fan, but I'm still understanding the lore. My brother's a huge Batman fan. Understanding the lore of somebody just dealing with so many insane, psychotic people and just seeing so many horrific, violent, disgusting things, people can break seeing that. You have to be mentally strong to handle something like that. Mentally, to try to not go insane. You really have to be that strong. And maybe with Superman, maybe he can handle it because he's not from the world and he can see these things, but maybe not be emotionally attached to it because he is not from that world. Now, when he invested in something, let's say Lois Lane, and I think in comics with that, Injustice, where Lois Lane dies, he loses it. So I see that change, why Zack Snyder did what he did, and I thought it was genius. I liked it. I thought it was clever. The Doomsday was fine. Like I said, it's again, Zack Snyder had his version of what he wanted to do, and eventually the studios kept in, had their own agenda, and just of what they wanted to do. From what I've understood. So I think VVS, stylized, I think it's underrated for being different formula of what the MCU is and trying to do some things differently. I have never watched the theatrical cut again, and I don't want to watch the theatrical cut again. I never want to watch the theatrical cut again because I thought it was so bad. But after, the ultimate cut, putting those 30 extra minutes back makes a huge difference. Makes a huge difference. Very. And in Watchmen, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, man. Zack, he got 2, man. Vigilantes and superheroes. What is a superhero? What is a superhero? And are people worth saving in such a vile, corrupted world? And I like how this is more of a crime film with superheroes in it. And the story gets complicated. And I like that Zack Snyder tries to not have a simple story besides with Justice League. He tries to make it kind of convoluted, like you're literally investigating what is going on. And I like all these different points of view that's happening. As the more you go in, that there's more twists and turns, there's more to it, there's more, something up is amiss. And you're just waiting for the answers to slowly be given to you. And I like that this was a detective story. Imagine a Batman film, kind of like, the Batman kind of had it, but imagine a Batman film with the Watchmen vibes to it. You kind of got that with Matt Reeves' The Batman. It was more like, David Fincher. But with Zack Snyder's Watchmen as a Batman film, dude, imagine that shit. Imagine that. And you have all these other villains in the film kind of just roaming around as Batman tries to figure out the main story of the plot. That I will freaking be like, I would freaking do that. I would pitch something like that. I would freaking be like, hell yeah. Do that for Ben Affleck's Batman, man. If I just had the control, be like, hey Ben, come here. We gonna do a Batman show, mini limited series, but like Watchmen with the Batman villains in there. It's gonna be set before the events of BVS, before Batman gets all crazy, psychotic, and what happens to Robin. So it'll be a prequel show leading up to his behavior in BVS. Villains, I don't know. He could be fighting Two-Face, he could be fighting Riddler, he could be fighting Scarecrow, he could be fighting so many different people. That makes him go loony. And I did read the comic books of Watchmen. I actually would like to get it. I personally thought they capture shot for shot from the comic book with some alter changes. You know, some changes here. I personally believe those changes were probably for the best to make more sense and relatable and realistic. Instead of a giant squid from another dimension coming in and destroying, you know, the world. If you haven't seen the Watchmen show, which is underrated, Watchmen TV show. Instead of that, they use a bomb. Using the energy that Dr. Manhattan has harvested. Well, Ozymandias somehow has been, you know, secretly harboring his energy, taking that energy and creating a device that, and it's weird, you know, it's one of the rare that you have superheroes losing in movies. That's the first time I think I've seen any film that a superhero lost. Second time is Infinity War. And the third time would be Glass. We have these heroes just lose. The main hero lost. And then the villains end up losing when you have the secret villains end up losing in that. Rorschach's one of the best vigilante heroes, anti-heroes I've seen. Jackie Earle Haley. Underrated actor for that role. Does not get enough attention as that character. And I felt like there was a lot of unknown actors, or at least not a lot of A-list. I think they were like C-list or B-list actors. Patrick Wilson was cool. And it sucks the movie barely made money, you know. But it's developed a cult following since then. It came out 2009. 2009. I remember I rented the comic book like 2 or 3 times in high school, and I read it. And it was interesting. You have all these mini stories that kind of happen within between the plot. It reminds me of Twin Peaks, David Lynch's way of storytelling, and that is masterful. I think that's one of the hardest things to do when you're writing, and try to make it all make sense, to kind of reflect back and forth, to make sure you're following along the story and then the world and the characters. And I believe that's extremely difficult to do, where you're having multiple story arcs colliding with one another to tell one simple overall big story. And that's challenging. It's very interesting, but challenging. Challenging to do. I have several favorite scenes in Watchmen, especially with Rorschach when gets locked up in jail. When he gets captured by the police and then in jail. The first fight scene you see with the comedian. I love the sequences where Spear Spectre is trying to talk to her ex, Dr. Manhattan, to return to Earth. And Dr. Manhattan sequence his own little story. There's so many great sequences here. And I love that the action wasn't over exaggerated. It just happens like a moment and then boom. But it still keeps its crime drama element there. And that's exactly what a Batman film should have been. I believe Zack Snyder is one of the perfect directors to direct a Batman film. They just never had the vision to really even see it. Never. And the way that they use him in the VVS shows perfectly he was the right guy to make a Batman film. I'm not dogging The Batman, I actually think the Batman, Matt Reeves' version of the character is probably the best Batman film so far, even more so a little bit than Christopher Nolan's. Because it keeps that crime, drama, dark element to it. A little bit better than The Dark Knight, I have to be honest. Even though I like The Dark Knight a lot, because it gets psychological a bit, where you have villains you have the hero and the villain trying to outsmart one another. And that's great. You know, a psychological game where good and evil isn't all that it is cracked up to be. And the show Watchmen, I loved it. It gets a little weird. And I love weird, but it gets a little complicated. And I actually like that. Each episode, they brought something new and unique to each episode. It does fall into a trend of the culture. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But the way they decided to tell this story was just so unique. I love how they told the story. That's like the best part about this show to me. I loved how they told the story, and that it will subvert what you thought was going to happen and give you something completely different, and it added something new and unique to the story, to the show. How many episodes were there? Like 9 episodes? They were starting a moment in like, you know, starting off. And I kind of like that they used the racial element to an interesting factor into the film. Where somebody would use a character symbol, which I don't think Rorschach's character was racist. I'll have to look back in the comics again. But they would grab that concept and to devise a new cult out of that mask to fight against the society. And there was layer upon layer upon layer to the story. What's that actress's name? Hong Chow. She was great. A very underrated actress. I would love to see her more stuff. I unfortunately didn't see her in The Whale, and she has this other A24 movie coming I want to see her in. But the way her she was great. I think her character didn't appear like the third to the last episode, and then she's kind of like the main villain of trying to follow out a master plan. I love that each episode revealed each character's situation and just added to the story, and they flash back and forth. And it wasn't an action-heavy series. It was more theme and story-driven. Like, it was just... Well, I think there's only 8 episodes. But it was just so interesting. The characters were complex. The story was complex. And I thought... And this is just me. I thought it was one of the best writings I've seen in television. Ever. I love experimentation for shows and series like that. Like, I loved it. Like, I freaking loved it. Like, every time something would happen in the show and they would do something completely different, and it would completely surprise you. Unpredictable. I could see the show getting a lot of hate because there's scenes in there that happen and may not make sense at the time, but eventually it will come back and address what would happen in that scene early on in the show, and then it will make sense. It's like, oh snap. I've never seen that in the show before. And that's rare. If it has, let me know what that show is so I can look it up and research it. But I've never seen that in a TV show before. And you really have to be patient, and you can't turn your brain off when you are watching this show. You can't. Especially, with the old man in the wheelchair, and it flashbacks to his purpose, where he was a superhero way back in the day. And you see what happened with his life and how it ties into the main character, Regina King's character, which she is my favorite role of her right now. It was so great to see her in this. Dude, underrated actress. Underrated. Dude, she was freaking amazing in this. She was freaking amazing in this show. I actually would like to rewatch it now since I'm talking about it, dude. That's some good ass. It was good. Interesting though, with some of Dr. Manhattan's character decisions, especially towards the second to the last episode, of choosing to. Well, he already knew and allowed it to happen. Maybe it's to a point. Maybe the character got tired of being around for so long. Which makes me kind of beg the idea of maybe being around for so long, you lose purpose and the value of time. And I think maybe Dr. Manhattan's character, maybe he forgot how precious time was. And how, maybe it took him a long time to really appreciate what he had. I love the surprise towards the, revealing that her husband was Dr. Manhattan. I was like, man, dude, I just love that. I know Damon Lindelof was involved in that, and probably one of his best works in writing that. I know he's in Lost. I haven't watched Lost. I did like Prometheus, even though I felt like there was too much of ambiguity in Prometheus, where I feel like they really tried to make it their own away from Alien. But the show I thought was just phenomenal, man. One of the best superhero shows I've seen. Another underrated superhero movie. Well, actually, I'm gonna go back to shows. Of last year's Moon Knight. With Phase 4. In fact, half of Phase 4 I love, man. I like, Moon Knight was awesome. I love the different personalities that was kind of going along with the main character, where he didn't remember. He adopted his new personality, and supposedly that is the character. The character has multiple personalities. In my inner children are runaways. Yeah! Again, lost track there. Main character has like 3 different personalities. And sometimes those personalities merge and formulate a different, unique version of Moon Knight, the character. It was interesting. It was more Egyptian-like. So the Moon Knight character was like a mummified-like superhero. I guess this is going to be the thing now where you're fully CGIing the whole costume of a Cape Crusader. Looks cool. You could make the suit however you like. Sometimes it got a little distracting a little bit where, the character is just fully CGI. But I love that battle that Oscar Isaac, the main character, was able to have with himself as the character. Where you have Steven and then I forgot the other character's name. Where they were like combating each other's body and trying to really figure out what was going on in the situation, and Oscar Isaac's character didn't remember. And his backstory is tragic. It was a tragic backstory. I ain't gonna lie, there was a moment in there in that flashback sequences, tragically, when they were showing it, and then you had them flashback to that. There was a scene in there I thought was just funny, and I don't mean to make it funny, but it just was funny to me, where you had this character dealing with tragedy. You know, the tragedy that was explained in the, if I remember the show correctly, terrible. But he endured so much of it, his mind finally cracked, and he couldn't handle the pain of his reality. And then he was like, suddenly he just popped a new personality in. He's like, "Hello, my mom. Hey, I'm gonna meet you again." Yeah, and just runs away. I ain't gonna lie, I was trying to hold my laugh in, but the way they told what the backstory, that was very tragic, and that wasn't funny at all. Not. Um, I mean, abuse is terrible. I guess supposedly there was a sequence where supposedly the castle had Doctor Doom in it. Well, we'll see about that. Where they go with where they go with that. I think Moon Knight's underrated. I believe there are a lot of interesting things that went on. It's actually probably my second favorite MCU show. I think WandaVision might be first because I just love how the show was told, and it slowly kind of revealed what was going on like a mystery. And I like stories that try to have a little mystery to it instead of just feeding you everything. I don't mind that at first, but sometimes if that story method doesn't do anything unique the first time around, then I don't know. It's not memorable to me. Moon Knight, and I love that they try to get a little. They tease you. I like where the film kind of teases you a little bit, and I thought Moon Knight teased the audience in the right way. I had a great time with it. I think it's one of the best. Mystery Men. And actually, I'm gonna go off by memory. I haven't seen this movie in years. I remember watching it. It was like 6 years ago since I seen this movie. 6 years ago. And I watched it, and it's about like these low-level superheroes that don't get enough attention, and their reputation sucks. And if you don't know, Ben Stiller stars in it, and it's like these quirky superheroes. They would get together and they would take down a crazy ass supervillain. And I remember the style in it. I don't remember what was the budget on it. I remember just how quirky, but still grounded in this satire, gritty comedy felt like, and it was like in the 90s, and it felt like a very nostalgic. I wouldn't say coming of age, but it's felt like a movie you would grow up watching. That's always been there. When you watched it, when you discovered it, it felt so nostalgic. And I watched it one time, and I'm like, wait a minute, why their rating of this movie wasn't good? I remember William H. Macy's character. His character was like a wimp, but he eventually redeemed himself, and I loved his arc in it, where he would get so down on his luck of his superhero abilities, but with Ben Stiller, who's like I think if I remember correctly, Ben Stiller's character, he was the one that was trying to help motivate and encourage his comrades to try to take down this villain. And I don't remember the movie too well, but I remember like some of the concept and some of the visuals that would happen. I think they had like a fancy turbo like car that goes through this tunnel, kind of like how Men in Black was. And then he would sum up the courage. I think I remember the final fight scene took place at this mansion, and they would like fight up in the stairs, and then they would go upstairs, and then I forgot what William H Macy's character. Unfortunately, I want to see if it's available anywhere to watch for free, and if I could find it for free, I would love to review it and recommend it to any of you guys, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're looking for a very unique, and I'm kind of miss some of those, that like those satire like superheroes that they try to really like just go out there, man, like just go no holds barred fun in a very experimental way. Mystery Man, you gotta check out. Like that is one of Ben Stiller's underrated movies, for those who have not heard of it. The trailer's nostalgic. Like, I remember, like, you know, I think it's Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers produced that. Like, the reason I really like Warner Brothers back in the day, because sometimes they would really do the experimental movies. Like, they would take the biggest risks, I think, with story ideas. I don't think all the other studios were to. But maybe that's just me, my own opinion, not thinking that. I think, and I've talked about these movies a lot. The East Row 177 trilogy, Unbreakable, Split Glass, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, whom I believe crafted probably the greatest superhero franchise trilogy of all time. With the first Unbreakable, I believe if Unbreakable was made now, it would be on a smaller budget. I think the biggest reason the budget was high on that film, and it feels like it could have been made like a $20 million film or less, I think because of Bruce Willis's pay. Because it felt like a very minimalistic film, and I think the budget was like $50 or $60 million. And I don't think that was the best move to have an expensive drama superhero film, mostly built on drama, that high. And the movie did bomb. And then you had, Split 2016, which was like, I think like $10 million or less than that. And then it was really like a one location kind of movie. So M. Night got creative with it. And to see that, it was a horror film, but it was a secret supervillain film where, that's rare to pull off. You see that, and after so many years later, it's an Unbreakable sequel. And thank goodness that they were able to make a third film and conclude it. Is the third film the weakest one in the franchise? Maybe I might agree with that, because I felt like the third film did not capitalize on some of the ideas that they were pitching, and I thought M. Night could have done things a little bit more experimental. Or I feel like he didn't know what to do with them. And I mentioned that in videos before previously, when I talked about those movies, especially with Glass. I thought he didn't know what to do with them. But I think it's probably one of the most realistic predictions of what if a superhero film existed in our world, and what would that look like? He dealt with it with dealing with mental illness. And I love the psychological aspects of a superhero dealing with that. And my next list will be Darkman. For those who don't know what Darkman is a superhero film, obviously, directed by Sam Raimi. It's actually my favorite Sam Raimi film, besides his version of Spider-Man. I think it is my favorite film of his work. And it's about a scientist who develops he's trying to develop a solution for skin care, like rubber skins you could just put on like a mask or something. But unfortunately, he gets a assaulted and his work gets stolen by a group of thugs and they burn him alive in the building. He survives it and he wants revenge. And he uses his surviving technology to craft not only the perfect human suit of himself, but also, trying to not fall into pure madness. And I love when he does it. There's a scene in there, it's actually one of my favorite scenes in there, where he gets so frustrated of trying to make sure the cells of the skin stays intact for a certain amount of time. At least has to pass 90 minutes. And when it doesn't, he just loses it in frustration, and he thinks this cat that he sees nearby, and just grabs a pole and starts to banging it everywhere. He's being mocked as a freak and losing it. And then I just love his burnt look design. It's grotesque. He's missing his lips. Half his skin, a good chunk of his skin is gone. Like half his face is like here is gone. He has skin right here. And his costume is just burnt bandages or just a rubber mask. And he just has a hat and a long trench coat. Cool design. He doesn't have any powers except I think the burnt marks kind of help enhance his abilities a bit in super strength. So he's a little bit stronger now. And he is immune to pain. He can't feel any pain. I mean, when somebody punches him, he'll feel like the force, but he won't feel the pain in the damage he's receiving, because the damage was so bad it burnt his ability to feel pain. I mean, there's 2 other sequels. The sequels ain't really that good because Liam Neeson doesn't return. They're straight to DVD video movies from Universal, and I love that there was a horror element to it. And even with some of M. Night Shyamalan's East Road 177 trilogy, the Split, it's a horror film. Glass was a psychological thriller, but whenever the Beast showed up, it added that horror element to it with his character. It was like if they had if a Universal monster was a superhero, that what Darkman would be. And with Sam Raimi's style, you have this bizarre, gritty, dark look. And I honestly, Universal has some great ass visual superhero movies. I think Darkman was the most well known for me. And I would love it if they brought Darkman back. The Guyver, I'm gonna put that down there. The Guyver, which is a Japanese property, another superhero franchise. Well, it's kind of popular in Japan. It's from the 80s, and there was 2 live action adaptations. I think they were straight to video adaptations, and they weren't bad. I think you could watch both of them for free on YouTube, and even the animes. And I think there's 2 or 3 anime adaptations. My favorite is the 12 episode OVA. There's a 2004 or 5 series which again ends in a cliffhanger, just like the OVA. And I think it's one of those stories where they have a interesting concept in the world building, but I don't think they know how to end the property. It deals with a teenager who finds this weird control device, and he gets involved with it and informs the suit of this super badass armored alien from another world. If you've seen Blue Beetle, that's what it is, but more darker and gritty. And I did see the Blue Beetle trailer that's been out for 2 or 3 days. And when that trailer came out, it reminded me of the Guyver. It reminded me so much of the Guyver. Am I going to see it? I don't know. I kind of do. I also kind of don't, because it follows a formula. But it reminds me of the Guyver. And the Guyver is fighting these ugly monsters called Zoonoids from another world, which this company recreates these monsters, and their secret plan is to take over the world and infest the whole world as these zoonoid monsters. And the Guyver is supposed to be here to stop them, which the Guyver is an alien suit which is designed to stop these creatures from ever existing, and they were from another planet, another world. And I recommend Guyver for those who haven't. If you're looking for an interesting superhero series, I would check out The Guyver. Highly recommend it. Very violent and bloody, and it gets crazy violent. Another underrated superhero show, and I liked it as a kid. I think I've watched almost every episode, but as a kid, Static Shock, which is now available on HBO Max, about a kid black kid who has these powers, electricity. I think it's a DC character. Yeah. I ain't gonna lie, a lot of the villains in that show weren't so memorable, but the character, and I like the theme song. And I think the composer was the composer who composed the Boys in the Hood, which I have to be honest with you, that's a pretty cool ass. It had a pretty cool ass, theme. Who can play Static Shock? Like, I'm curious what if when DC Studios brings that character to life. I'm curious how that's gonna play out. Like, I'm really curious. I don't know if they're gonna tie it into the main DC timeline with James Gunn stuff, but I could see a show out of that. I think what they're doing now is they're eyeing the kid from Stranger Things to possibly play that. I think there's been rumors of them trying to adapt Static Shock into to be present in the DC. I like that he was able to span his like little blade thing that he's riding on, and it's very unique. And I'm currently kind of going back and rewatching it. I'm taking my time with it. It's been so long. Like, the animation still holds up with 2D animation. I'm really missing that. Another one I just thought of. And this is on Disney Plus. And I know the original X-Men is getting popular. It was popular. And honestly, I was into it, but not so much. And knowing the true story behind how they released the episodes out of order. The one X-Men show that really resonated with me was X-Men Evolution, was where most of the characters were in like high school to college. And they were all kind of interconnected. And this is really right off when Bryan Singer's X-Men was released in theaters. I think it was 2000, 2001 when the show started coming out. And I think it was like 50-some episodes. And they had like Sabretooth as like this redneck kind of like southern kind of guy. and I actually liked it. I resonated with that X-Men show a lot more than the current one, because I ain't gonna lie to you, because when those episodes aired, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on, but I was kind of interested in visually what was happening, and was curious what the characters was going to do, but I was lost with story of what was happening, and it gets kind of confusing when you're not, you don't see the show from the very beginning, but then you're just watching all these reruns, and you're just watching, and I grew up watching it, but I wasn't into it as most, but I did like it. I haven't seen all the episodes still. I haven't. I have not seen it. I haven't even seen all the episodes, or I don't remember all the episodes from X-Men Evolution. It was so long ago. I know it's on Disney Plus. I would like to have time to rewatch it when I can. If so. Honestly, and this is another MCU, and this is in Phase 4. I think Spider-Man No Way Home's, I think that's the most popular Spider-Man movie as of right now. So it's not really underrated, but I still think Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's, can still consider the best one in the franchise in Spider-Man films overall. I don't think it's underrated. I think that's the most popular Spider-Man film as of right now. I think Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings is underrated, and I had a blast watching this movie. It didn't even feel like a superhero film. I don't know, the character is kind of put on the back burner in history because of his development and then the origins, and completely revamp it into what it was now on the screen was amazing. I thought some of the action scenes here, the bus fight scene and the final fight scene, I thought was awesome. Dude, I was into this. The final fight scene, they had the magical dragon Michelle Yeoh's in this, and then you have the legendary actor, Hong Kong actor Tony Leung, to play the villain, a complex villain, which I love his story arc as a character. I think I love his character. I love how crooked he is, but then finding that one, I know it's cliche as crap, but it worked, and it kind of drew me in. Where, the term man on his purpose, on his grind. Well, he fell in love. He found a woman that matched his energy. He fell in love, had a family. And if things went right, I firmly believe he would have been the good guy. He probably would have been like Vegeta, and the relationship probably would have been like Vegeta and Bulma from Dragon Ball Z. But after she passed on in the movie, and his rage just went out, his motives were understandable after that. And I thought that the complexion between him and his father was amazing. It didn't even feel like a Marvel film. It felt like a fantasy martial art film that had nothing to do with the MCU. And I think I like half the MCU Phase 4 properties I really liked more than 1, 2, and 3. And some of the originals were good too. It's part of my favorites. I like the Captain America. And the original Iron Man. Because it didn't, they tied into the MCU a little bit, but like vaguely. And they just focused on being its own standalone story and not really having to force that connection to really get you and invested. Like, okay, you got to remember this is part of an MCU movie. I freaking forgot it was MCU until they brought a few Easter eggs in, like Trevor. They brought Trevor in and addressed that Mandalorian stuff, which was funny. And they got the director to direct the next Avengers, Which I'm curious how those action scenes are really gonna. I think the action scenes are gonna be a little bit better compared of how the Russo brothers filmed the up close fight scenes with some of the movies they directed in the past. I think they got better when they did The Gray Man, but I just think with The Winter Soldier, I didn't like them close up shaky action sequences. Sometimes I kind of got why, because some of those stunts are tough to do, so they have to shoot it in a way to make it look like these actors are actually doing these stunts and knowing what they're doing. So I get why they shot it the way they chose to shoot it, and plus it does give a level of energy and adrenaline to it. It does. It really does. And I love the fight scenes in this, and I love the ending to Shang-Chi. Like when the father realizes his greatest mistake, because his motive was to see the love of his life again. And ignorance does hurt you. So when he unleashes this monster thinking it's his wife, and the monster was basically manipulating him to open that gate. He realizes his great mistake and realizing he's about to kick the bucket. He gives those 10 rings to his son. Was like, son, I fucked up. Here you go. Goodbye. I just wanted to see your mom again, man. Love is a powerful emotion. But he took care of it. Am I excited for the current lineup of MCU? No. Because, well, so far none of these characters have met. And then I'm still kind of intrigued and concerned how the Eternals are going to fit in the overall MCU. Because if they keep going the franchise the way that they're going and they don't address anything of the other movies that happen, I don't know, man. I think there's going to be a continuity to that, and there are already fan questions out there. Is like, why isn't this being addressed from this movie, from that movie, and this movie from that movie? Where's the progression? Where is the, what's the word I'm looking for? Where's the awareness of all these other events happening with these movies? And are these characters aware of this? Like, is the Avenger Tower or is the Avengers headquarters still? Well, still, the Avengers headquarters and all that is destroyed. And I don't think they have a faculty yet. I still think, and I think maybe Secret Avengers is going to address some of the issues that are happening along. Because remember, I think they're still evading out of the Hydra phase. Which still, some of the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are still underground, hiding from the U.S. government too. That's also trying to get involved. What I think the MCU hasn't done so well is to address a lot of the Hydra aftermaths of what's happening. And now with Captain Marvel after that, which I really love, I think Captain Marvel's underrated. I think Captain Marvel's really underrated. You got the Kralls. How are their involvement with the Thanos and all that? What were they doing? See, there are a lot of elements that are introduced early on in the films that aren't being addressed in the other films. When we're introducing these other characters, we're still wondering what's happening on some of the other plot elements that are introduced from the previous films, and why aren't they being addressed? Maybe they're going to be addressing Secret Invasions. What is left of the Avengers? So Sam and Winter Soldier are closely working with the government, but there's no Avenger Squad. So is this new Captain America, is Sam going to create this new Avenger headquarters with Sam, with Captain America being gone? I heard they might try to get him back, Chris Evans. But how are you going to get him back? Because when he went back in time and fixed everything, he altered his own life to live life with Agent Carter. So are they going to go through a different timeline and bring him back? Or are they going to focus on a different timeline where he doesn't go back and returns the Infinity Stones and decides to keep them? And just will continue from another universe of that Captain America choosing not to return the Infinity Stones. A lot of questions that need answering. And I still don't know if What If is considered canon, part of the MCU. And actually, that's an underrated show, man. What If? Like, they had some pretty good episodes. Amazing show. I love I love experimentation. I love that show. Did every episode land? No. I love the Agent Carter episode. That was the first episode where they kind of switched it around. That it was Captain Britain, one of the best episodes, and I love the episode. I love the zombie episode, and I love the I thought the episode where Thor throws a big ass party and Captain Marvel comes in and cleans it up was funny. And I love the episode where Ultron and Vision fuse, and they try to take, and Agent Natasha tries to take him down, and things don't go as planned. Which I think that show deserves a rewatch. That was a good show. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the and then you had what if Black Panther went into space and was part of the Guardians of the Galaxy instead of Peter Quill. Was interesting. Like, I love these what if theories, and I really, really appreciate what they went with this series. And I would love for a season 2. I'm trying to think of the episode where I have to look back at it. What was the episode where Tony Stark ended up dying? Oh yeah, it was Killmonger. It was Killmonger. If Killmonger somehow saved Tony Stark, and he basically, so if he knew everything about Tony Stark, he would have manipulated him into getting his trust and taking over Tony Stark and proceeding with his coup d'etat, I guess. That was an interesting episode. That was a dark episode. I love some of these episodes. They got dark. There was another episode they got pretty dark too. Besides the zombie one and that one, I can't remember. But I did. One of my favorite parts in the MCU was that in that series was when the Ultron Vision got the Infinity Stones, was able to sense the Watcher was watching him. Which means this whole, and I love that twist. I love the twist of the overall narrative. Instead of just instead of this Watcher just telling you these random stories of a different universe, when that twist happened where it was actually happening and the Watcher was involved, it was like, oh crap. So now you're not just watching an anthology, you are literally watching these other universes actually happening, these other realities. And one is getting so powerful and so dangerous that it is able to warp through another reality and fight with the Watcher. And the Watcher had to go through these other universes, these other stories that he was telling to the audience. It's like, hey, I need your help to fight this Ultron villain out because he is getting too dangerous and powerful, and he is literally has the power to destroy all realities. When that twist happened, I freaked out and jumped. That was true. That was interesting writing right there, and I loved it. I loved it. I love that twist. It's similar to how Watchmen went to go tell its story. Like, I love that twist, and it kind of made sense, and it addressed it. The main reason why the story was even existing anyway. Like, I loved it. I did not expect it. And if it's something I don't expect and somehow they're able to pull it off, is amazing. Is amazing. I loved how they were able to pull that off. I loved it. I loved how they were able to pull that off. That was genius. That was so cool. It's not underrated, but I might list my favorite MCUs. I will say there's probably 10 of them. So it was like 1, Infinity War, The Eternals, Endgame, Shang-Chi, What If, Moon Knight, I do like Civil War. I do love the original Iron Man. And the original Thor was cool too. I love the Dutch angles used in that. I thought they picked a perfect filmmaker to make the first Thor. Also, I was watching this the other couple weeks ago during the Super Bowl. And really, in the 90s, you were watching the 90s, the only time you would get like an African American superhero was like in a comedy. Spawn was great. It was alright. It was kind of terrible, but I would say Spawn, the animated series, is an underrated cartoon superhero show. It's actually one of my favorites. I bought it on DVD, but it's also available on HBO Max. Where it's not really a sequel to the Michael J. White adaptation in the 90s. But it's more of a just reiteration of the show, of the franchise, which they were been trying to do a whole new movie for years. Which I think is still in development hell. And it's probably one of the darkest superhero shows I've ever seen. And it goes no holds barred, and it's an animated show where you have Spawn basically complaining and tortured with his responsibility and duty as a soldier of Mamboja, a Hellspawn. But he chooses to go against it and to try to take out Jason Wynn, who murdered him in cold blood, and he wants revenge. And he's trying to plot a way to basically go after him and get his revenge. But a good half of the series, a good chunk of it's him really pretty much just complaining. It is. I mean, it's more about him feeling this overall guilt and just torment, and how it's affected him psychologically, and him trying to combat should he try to be a hero for good, or should he just be a follow Mamboja's orders? And it gets very complex in the character's mind. And I actually like with some of all these side characters. I think there's only 18 episodes, and unfortunately it ends on a cliffhanger because it got canceled back in the day. And they were trying to continue it. No word. I think there's just a lack of what creators believe to be a lack of interest into reviving a show that is almost 30 years old now. And I would disagree. But also, you would have to be like, and well, they're doing it for X-Men 97, so why not? But hey, if it's a darker superhero, it's a tough sell because not every age appropriate is going to be able to see it. That's just it. Not everybody's going to watch a rated R, mature, dark and gritty superhero property. I mean, there's so many of them. I would like to look at all of them. There's so many of them that's just you may not heard of that may not resonate with a lot of people. But you know what? Actually, I think maybe that's what they need to do. Maybe they need to go out and venture into these unusual, unique superhero properties and to try to get them out. They've done it with Guardians of the Galaxy. They've done it with, well, M. Night done it with his own. Watchmen was an attempt. But it's more... It's risk. It's risk. It's a chance that you have to try to get into. They did Logan. I think now Logan's kind of... Well, I don't know. Logan's underrated. Because I think it's popular. I think when it came out, I think it's popular. I think it's still popular till this day after 5 or 6 years since the film been out. Like there's, and honestly, the movie I watched a couple weeks ago back with my brother. It's a comedy, like 90s movies, black superhero comedy, be a parody. Which I didn't like it. They stereotyped it. But anyway. There was this one. It was about the Meteor Man. There was Meteor Man. I saw bits and pieces of that. Bits and pieces of it. Which to be honest, I need to go back and rewatch that. But I do remember Blank Man. And Blank Man's funny. I think some of the humor still holds up today. You have this nerd guy who pretty much gets like a sink glove and in pajamas and a blanket wrapped around. And you have David Wayne's playing this superhero. And you have David Allen Garr play his sidekick, but towards the end, trying to take down like this corrupted corporation. And I don't remember too much of the plot details. And I might, if it's still on Tubi, I might rewatch it and I'll probably talk about it because the movie, like the jokes in it is so damn funny and silly. Like this is a movie I know I could have just complete fun because it is what it is. It ain't like a action adrenaline movie where they force humor in there just force you to be entertained. No, it's a parody superhero comedy that's kind of self-aware a little bit, but not too much where it's meta. But it's a genre where you know what the formula is, and it just has fun with it. But as a comedy. And it's silly. At first I wasn't into it, but when I got back and revisited a little bit and then saw some of the scenes, I'm like, oh, this is funny. This is hilarious. Like Blank Man, I think Blank Man is underrated. I know I'm saying that without seeing the whole damn movie, but like I remember parts of it. I remember there were some funny moments in there. I remember that robot with the mop for hair dancing around with Damon Wayne, and every time Damon Wayne would kiss the girl he likes, he would get like all rosed up, be like, eh. he would like lose control and tries to control himself, but he freaking falls on his ass and tries to like, because he's so shy but turned on kissing the girl he likes. I think she was like a reporter or something. It's hilarious, bro. Like, you got the dude. Tubi. If you could get a hold of Tubi, type Blankman. If you could find Blankman, Damon Wayans, 1995 or 4, whenever the movie came out, check it out, bro. Like, it's hilarious. Like, if you're tired of the superhero fatigue, I'm gonna tell you right now, check out Blankman. That is one you need to check out, dude. Like, that's a funny superhero film. That is hilarious. I think you would have a good laugh out of all the jokes that any MCU movie has written in really almost 20 years since they've been doing this. Almost 20 years. 2008. Since they've been doing this. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the side story along with the MCU show, is underrated. For those who don't know what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is, they had a side TV show focusing on the S.H.I.E.L.D. section of it. While the superheroes do everything in the movies, they have this show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where they were having certain things that kind of, they had little to hardly anything to do with the MCU, but it was still intact in that world, where it would happen right along the lines of the movies. But the further along the series went, the less they tied in anything. There were a few cameos from certain heroes. The most well-known one was Nick Fury, who had a cameo sequence in the last episode of season 1. And he had one character from the Thor world appear into the film. And I think she appeared in the same season or season 2. And I really liked it. Gabriel Luna's, I think that's the character. I think that's the actor name. I like his take as Ghost Rider, but he's a different Ghost Rider, and I think he's the best Ghost Rider that we had so far. And I'm actually disappointed that they're not going back. I would love for them to go back and really make that Ghost Rider their main Ghost Rider, and I hope something comes out of that, because he was terrific. But I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. it was on Netflix. But I think with the acquisition with Disney, it should be on Disney Plus, I believe, because it's ABC television, so they technically own it. So it should be on there. Like, it should be. Honestly, I ain't gonna lie to you. And this is just me. I had more fun time watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. than with a lot of some of the MCU movies that didn't, if there were side stories, if they were like sequels to a trilogy besides the Captain America movies. They got much more interesting with the show than with some of the movies that went along into the film. Some of the shows, some of the episodes were actually pretty dang good and intense. Like, it kept me hooked after every single episode. Now, I think season 4, I think after season 3, I think there's only 5 or 6 seasons. For the latter half part of the show kind of lost me a bit, especially when they got into space. I stopped watching it after they got into space, and it felt very inconsistent. Like, there were just things that would just happen at a random, and it felt like it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And things were just happening. And the reason they were in space was supposed to be like the same time as the Avengers were dealing with their stuff in space and back, and then with Thanos. And it felt very weird. And when it came on Netflix again, like 2 years ago, I ended up taking the time to kind of just finishing up the series after hearing that it was concluding. And then I started watching before we finished. I finished watching before we moved into this facility. And it got good again after the space saga. And I like that the last season try to get a little bit experimental with its structure and story, and then you have Agent Coulson, which I would like to see him back in the MCU if he's not, you know, dead. Well, he's a clone. This character's a clone. A lot of the character development was so interesting, and some of the stories were so good in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is increasingly underrated as an MCU property. And I would recommend anybody who wants to see something. I mean, it's more on S.H.I.E.L.D. side, so you can forget about seeing the main characters. But there were a lot of great things that happened in this show, and I highly recommend anybody who's looking for a good, MCU television series or something a little bit different. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., man, might be one of my favorite shows. Underrated as hell. Underrated, man. Like, I highly would recommend Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Anybody, like really give Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a chance. And I remember, what year did it first come out? Like 2015? Can't be almost a decade, because I remember my first time I had sake, and I think it was the episode where Chloe Bennett's character discovered that she had powers, and discovered that she was Quake. I remember that night when I had warm sake, and then I was watching the episode, and then I was like, holy crap. She got powers. I remember that. Honestly, I have not seen The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, but I heard that was interesting good. Which maybe I should check that out. I guess you could say The Mask is kind of like a superhero film with Jim Carrey. Because it's a comic book and it's kind of like it. But I heard and I remember hearing about the comics explain about some of the comics dealing with The Mask. And you know what? Even though I know the Jim Carrey version is considered a cult classic, I would love to, in fact, shoot, if I ever get a chance, I would love to do an accurate prediction of a rated R version of The Mask. Because I heard The Mask is supposed to be like dark and gritty and dark. Like satire, like gritty, like if the Looney Tunes was rated R. Or like if rated R, if Ren and Stimpy was rated R. Like I could see that happening. But it was so good. The Mask is so good. Anybody hasn't seen it and heard of it, you gotta check it. Jim Carrey. You gotta see it. You gotta see it. You gotta see it. I think also Batman Returns, Tim Burton's underrated. I couldn't really get into the 1988 or 89 Batman. I need to probably try to sit down and watch it and really just try to get through it. But I don't know. It wasn't the darkness. It wasn't... Because Batman Returns was dark, and I loved it. And I liked it a lot better. Maybe was it the effects? And I just, after time has been away, maybe I just couldn't really get into it. But I need to sit down and really try to just watch it and try to just get through it. Spawn, I think the original Spawn, Michael J. White's kind of underrated, even though it's campy a little bit. I think the original 2005 Fantastic Four is underrated. I had a great time with it. Does the tone and vibe mesh still hold up to today's standards? No, but I get a lot of it. I like the action scenes, and I love the team trying to figure out how to solve their situation of trying to go back to normal, and I just love that dynamic with the characters. And I just love the final action. I love the design of Doctor Doom in that final scene. And honestly, I would love if some of the filmmakers who did superhero movies in the early 2000s would come back and direct some of the current superhero movies in the MCU, because I actually loved a lot of the action sequences, besides Daredevil and Elektra, to have their shot again at superheroes. I actually still loved Ang Lee's Hulk. I actually still think that's the best Hulk. I love the psychological trauma storyline. I like that. I love that he tried to edit the film as a comic book film, where you have all these unusual, unique editing choices, and it feels like a comic book film. And I'm sure people have caught on to that over time and figured out that kind of was the intent of Ang Lee's vision. And I love some of the action sequences with the Hulk. And I could see why it did not resonate. So it seems like it wouldn't surprise me because the Incredible Hulk didn't do great either at the box office. That they may never do a Hulk solo film. Maybe parts of a series. Because both of those films didn't do well financially. But I think Ang Lee's Hulk was phenomenal. I still remember watching it in theaters. I thought it was spectacular. I thought it was a grand scope adventure comic book movie, and I thought it was better than a lot of the superhero movies that came out in the early 2000s. And I still think some of Bryan Singer's X-Men movies are underrated, with Apocalypse and then Days of Future Past. I still think 8 Days of Future Past probably is literally one of the best superhero movies ever. And when in 2024, it will be 10 years since that movie came out. Later this year, I think in July, it will be 10 years since The Wolverine has come out. And same, it will be 10 years since The Man of Steel to come out. Another film coming out in September that came out 10 years ago. Prisoners. Not a superhero film. It's a mystery film. But wow, man. I mean, I'm just amazed, dude. Like these are some of the most underrated superhero movies. That second Fantastic Four movie, it was forgettable. It was actually kind of bad. But I don't know, man. Like, to me, a lot of the darker superhero movies gravitate me more. Because I feel like their stakes higher. And more experimental. I think for me, why Glass was so rewatchable for me, because just how different it tries to be. It's just interesting learning more of these superheroes' flaws psychologically, and then, the motives behind it. It gets really interesting. It's really interesting. But all right, I think that's it. I think I'm gonna wrap up my podcast for today on the superhero genre. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, and take care.